Liam Carter froze as the battlefield erupted around him, bullets ripping through the air. And then, out of nowhere, his German shepherd, Valor, leapt, knocking him to the ground just as gunfire tore past. Blood streaked down the dog's side, but Valor refused to fall. He stood tall, chest heaving, amber eyes locked forward, shielding his soldier with every ounce of strength left. "Dear God," Sergeant Riley whispered, his voice shaking. In that moment, every man saw it. This was more than a dog. This was a miracle of loyalty and courage. Would Valor survive the wound meant for his master? Hit like, share your thoughts in the comments, and tell us where you're watching from. Let's continue the story. The wind swept hard across the training base, carrying dust and the sharp scent of fuel. It was the kind of winter morning that made your eyes water and your lips crack. A day when the cold bit deep and the sky hung low like polished steel. Flags snapped against their poles, boots crunched over frozen gravel, and the kennels on the far edge of the yard echoed with the steady rhythm of barking and silence. Private First Class Liam Carter walked the narrow path toward those kennels with a quiet determination. He was 24 years old, tall and lean, with the wiry build of someone used to running more than sitting. His hair was clipped short, the color of wheat in shadow, and a faint scar traced his left cheekbone, the reminder of a car accident that had taken his mother when he was still a teenager. Since then, he had carried himself with a kind of steady gravity, speaking less than most, listening more, and carrying his grief like a stone in his pocket, always there, always heavy, but never shown unless you knew where to look. Waiting by the gate was Staff Sergeant Elena Morales, a woman of 38 with a compact athletic frame. Her skin was copper brown, her hair cut close under a cap, and her eyes sharp but not unkind. Morales was the type who expected hard work but rewarded honesty. She had built her reputation as one of the finest dog handlers on the base. Firm but fair, able to read a dog's fears and strengths the way some people read books. She nodded at Liam as he approached. "Carter," she said, her voice even but carrying authority. "You're here to see if you're ready for a partner. Remember, this isn't about what looks good on paper. This is about trust." Liam gave a simple nod. "Yes, Staff Sergeant." She pulled open the gate, and the sharp scent of straw and disinfectant rushed out with the sound of claws against concrete. Inside, rows of German shepherds stood in their kennels, some pacing, some sitting, all watching with alert eyes. Morales led him to the center stall, where a large, dark-coated shepherd sat like a statue. The dog's ears stood tall, his chest broad, his gaze steady. He didn't bark or wag, he simply watched, measuring the man who had stepped into his world. "This is Bravo 7, Morales said. 2 years old, 90 pounds, strong nerves, sharp mind. He's been through smoke, uneven ground, loud noises, even helicopter rides. He's not afraid, but he's not reckless either. He's waiting for someone to prove they're worth his attention." The dog's coat was black along the saddle, fading to rich tan on his legs and throat. His nose was wet and black, his eyes amber and intelligent. There was a tiny scar on his shoulder, old and healed, and his tail lay still, calm and deliberate. Liam crouched near the door, not too close, hands open. "Hey, boy," he murmured, his voice soft but sure. The shepherd studied him for a long moment, ears twitching slightly. Then he stood, stretched, and moved forward until his nose touched Liam's palm. It was not eagerness, it was decision. Liam let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. The dog's tail moved once, slow and certain like a pendulum finding its balance. Morales watched with a faint smile. "What do you see?" she asked. "He thinks before he acts," Liam said. "He's not desperate for approval, but he's curious. He'll follow if I earn it. He wants a job, not just affection." Morales gave a small nod. "Good. Let's see what the two of you can do together." She led them out to the training yard, a place full of challenges. Barrels that rolled underfoot, pallets stacked at odd angles, a tunnel of plywood, and a pit filled with shredded tires. Liam clipped a training line to the dog's collar. Morales folded her arms. "Set your pace, Carter. He'll test you. Don't baby him, don't rush him, let him work." The shepherd moved with power and grace, nose to the ground, eyes scanning. When a ladder clanged down with a metallic crash, the dog startled for a fraction of a second, then redirected his focus back to Liam's hand signal. Through the tire pit he flowed, careful and steady. At the tunnel, he paused to scent the air, then dipped low and went through without hesitation. Morales raised her eyebrows slightly. "That's a thinking dog," she said. Next came scent work. Morales hid a small box under a pallet and scattered decoys nearby. Liam gave the search command, short and clear. The shepherd lowered his head, quartered the yard with methodical sweeps, and within minutes sat neatly at the correct spot, eyes glancing back at Liam as if to say, "Found it. Now what?" "Pay him," Morales said. Liam crouched, offering both food and praise. The dog's mouth opened in a relaxed pant, his amber eyes shining with pride. For the first time, Liam felt something unlock inside his chest, a warmth he hadn't carried in years. By the time they returned to the office trailer, the winter wind had numbed their ears and cheeks. Morales slid paperwork across the desk. "You're signing for a partner, not a piece of equipment. He'll save your life because it's in his nature. You'll protect him because it's your duty. If you ever treat him as less than that, I'll take him back. Clear?" "Yes, Staff Sergeant," Liam answered firmly. From the doorway, a supply corporal named Tyler Briggs leaned in. He was a red-bearded, freckled young man with an easy grin, always quick with gossip and commentary. "So," he said, "got a name for the big guy yet?" Liam looked at the shepherd lying calmly by the heater, muscles relaxed but eyes alert. Something about the dog's steady gaze made the word come easily. "Valor," Liam said. The dog's ears twitched at the sound, and for the first time his tail swept the floor in a full arc. Morales allowed herself a small smile. "Good choice. Names are promises, Carter. Say it. Like you mean it." Liam crouched and whispered it again, more softly this time. "Valor." The shepherd met his gaze, and in that silent exchange something permanent was forged. The paperwork was signed, the leash now his to hold, and the winter air outside no longer felt quite so cold. When they stepped out of the office, the flag still cracked in the wind, the sky still looked like steel, but at Liam's side walked a partner, steady, strong, and chosen. Their bond had begun, not with fireworks but with a quiet certainty, the sound of two lives clicking into place. It was only the beginning, but beginnings are everything. The mornings on base began before the sun, when the frost still clung to the edges of chain-link fences, and the world was painted in shades of gray. Breath hung in the air like smoke, and the sound of boots striking asphalt echoed across the parade ground. For Liam Carter, those mornings no longer began alone. Valor paced at his side, a black and tan shadow with eyes like amber fire, every movement coiled with quiet strength. The dog had settled into his new life with a confidence that seemed to grow daily, but now came the real test. Training under pressure, the kind designed to break the unprepared and temper the worthy. The instructor for this stage was Captain Raymond Holt, a man in his mid-40s with a square jaw and shoulders thick as masonry. His hair, once dark, had faded into iron gray, and his beard was kept trimmed to a sharp edge. He had the face of a man who had known too many deserts, sunburn etched into crow's feet around his eyes, and the voice of someone who had no patience for excuses. Holt had served in 2 major deployments overseas, and though his record was decorated, the stories whispered among soldiers spoke of the day his convoy was ambushed. He had pulled 3 men out of burning vehicles, but one of them, his closest friend, hadn't survived. Since then, Holt carried an unbending seriousness, as if every drill might be the one that saved a life or cost one. He stood before the line of handlers and their dogs, clipboard in hand, eyes cold but steady. "Listen up," Holt barked. "A partner is no good to you unless he's trained for chaos. Out there, smoke, fire, screaming. It all happens at once. If you hesitate, you're dead. If he hesitates, you're both dead. Today, we find out who's ready and who's not." The drills began with scent detection under distraction. Loudspeakers blasted recorded gunfire and shouting while smoke grenades filled the yard with acrid haze. Valor lowered his head, nostrils flaring, tail rigid with focus as Liam guided him toward the scattered debris. A whistle blew, and explosions cracked nearby, but the shepherd pressed forward, weaving through obstacles until he located the hidden satchel. He sat sharply, ears pointed, eyes locked on Liam as if to say, "Here it is. Trust me." Liam gave the hand signal, rewarding him with a firm pat on the chest. Even Holt allowed himself a brief nod. Next came the casualty drag. Volunteers posed as injured soldiers, sprawled on the dirt with weighted packs to simulate dead weight. The command was simple but brutal. The dog had to seize fabric and haul the soldier clear of danger. Liam crouched beside Valor, stroking his thick neck. "You've got this, boy," he whispered. The dog lunged forward, teeth locking onto the strap of a vest, muscles rippling as he pulled with every ounce of strength. He slipped once, paws skidding, but instead of quitting, he regrouped, claws digging deep, and dragged the man to safety. Sweat rolled down Liam's temple despite the cold, pride swelling in his chest. The training continued for hours. Searches in darkened rooms with strobe lights, tunnels filled with sudden metallic clatters, dummies that jerked upright when touched. Each test was designed to overwhelm. At one point, a hydraulic machine dropped scrap metal with a crash so loud it rattled teeth. Several dogs bolted, handlers struggling to regain control. Valor startled, ears flattening, but then his eyes found Liam. For a breath, the dog stood trembling, and then, slowly, he sat, chest rising and falling as if daring the noise to break him. Liam crouched and whispered, his hand steady on Valor's back. "You're my hope out there." The dog's tail thumped once against the ground, a quiet signal of resilience. Among the handlers that day was Corporal Denise Harper, a tall, athletic woman with a waterfall of auburn hair tied in a tight braid. Her skin was pale, almost porcelain, her face angular but softened by freckles. Harper was sharp-tongued, quick to tease yet fiercely loyal to those who earned her trust. She handled a lean Belgian Malinois named Rook, a blur of energy and drive. Harper had grown up on a farm in Nebraska, used to hard winters and harder work, and carried herself with the easy toughness of someone who never backed down from a challenge. She noticed the bond forming between Liam and Valor, and, after a particularly grueling round, she grinned, brushing dirt from her fatigues. "That dog of yours, he doesn't quit. He's got fire in him. Reminds me of you, Carter, though don't get cocky." Her tone was teasing, but her eyes held respect. By the afternoon, muscles ached and throats were raw from shouting commands. Holt called for one final drill. A mock battlefield had been set, smoke rising, sirens blaring, dummies scattered as casualties. "This is the closest you'll get before the real thing," he said. "Your partner must find the wounded, alert you to threats, and get you both through. If either of you cracks, you fail." Liam tightened Valor's harness, adjusting the straps. The dog's amber eyes met his, steady, unwavering. "We do this together," Liam whispered. The whistle blew. They advanced into chaos. Valor moved like liquid muscle, ears swiveling, nose working furiously. He located the first casualty, barking sharply, body stiff with alertness. Liam rushed forward, pulling the dummy to safety. A loud explosion sounded, and a metal drum toppled across their path. Valor hesitated, paws skidding, but then pushed past it, dragging Liam with him as if saying, "There's no time to fear." They cleared obstacles, marked hazards, and located the final dummy deep in the smoke. Liam hauled it out, coughing through the haze. When they stumbled back into the open air, both soldier and dog were streaked with dirt and sweat, but their eyes burned with the same flame. Captain Holt stood at the edge, arms folded. His gaze moved from Liam to Valor, then back. For a long moment he said nothing. Finally he spoke, voice low but firm. "That's a team." The sun had dipped by the time the drills ended, painting the horizon in bruised purples and reds. Liam sat on the edge of the training yard, Valor lying at his feet, chest rising and falling with the deep breaths of exhaustion. Liam leaned down, resting his hand on the shepherd's head. "You're more than a dog," he whispered. "You're my hope." Valor closed his eyes, tail brushing the dirt, as if he understood. It was only training, but already, on those fields of smoke and steel, the bond between man and dog was being forged into something unbreakable. The mission orders came at dawn, slipped under doors and announced in clipped voices across the barracks. It was the first time Liam, Carter, and Valor would leave the safety of training grounds and step into the unpredictable field of combat support. The morning was tense, heavy with silence broken only by the clatter of gear being packed into transport trucks. The cold air bit at exposed skin, but no one complained. Soldiers learned to carry discomfort the way they carried ammunition, silently. Liam adjusted his vest, checking every strap, every pocket. Valor sat at his feet, ears alert, eyes scanning the bustle of men and machines. He was 2 years old, but carried himself with the calm steadiness of a veteran, his black and tan coat glossy despite the dust settling in the air. Around them, engines rumbled as armored vehicles prepared for departure. Liam placed a hand on the dog's thick neck, whispering what had become ritual. "You're my hope out there." Valor's tail brushed once against the ground. Their transport was led by Lieutenant Marcus Hale, a man in his early 30s with a chiseled face, square jaw shadowed with stubble, and piercing gray eyes that seemed to measure everyone in seconds. Hale was lean but wiry strong, his dark hair cropped short beneath his helmet. Known among the unit as sharp-tongued but fiercely protective, he carried the burden of command like a second skin. Rumors whispered that he had lost a younger brother years ago in a training accident, and though he never spoke of it, his leadership carried a relentless edge, as if every soldier under him was someone he refused to lose again. The convoy pushed out past the wire, the world outside painted in muted browns and grays, smoke already smudging the horizon. By midday, gunfire cracked in the distance, sharp against the silence of the barren land. The unit dismounted, boots striking dirt, and began to move in staggered lines through streets half choked with rubble. The smell of burned metal clung to the air. Liam kept close to Hale, Valor pacing in perfect heel, ears swiveling to every sound. The ambush came fast. Gunfire erupted from windows above, rattling across the street in a storm of lead. Soldiers hit the ground, shouting over the roar of automatic fire. Liam felt the heat of bullets whipping past, heard the sharp hiss of ricochets. Valor barked once, sharp and commanding, as if to pull Liam back to the moment. Hale shouted orders, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Carter, cover left. Keep that dog on you." The world narrowed to bursts of smoke, flashes of muzzle fire, and the pounding of Liam's heart. Then it happened. A mortar round slammed into the street not 20 feet from their position, throwing dust and shards of concrete into the air. Liam's ears rang, the world muffled, disoriented. Shrapnel had caught his shoulder, tearing fabric and skin, and the impact threw him onto his back. For a second, he couldn't breathe. Above him, smoke swirled, and figures loomed through the haze. Valor didn't hesitate. The German Shepherd lunged forward, teeth sinking into the strap of Liam's vest. With powerful haunches and muscles burning, the dog dragged his handler across broken ground, paws slipping but never stopping. Bullets struck walls around them, fragments raining down, but Valor pressed forward, pulling with a ferocity born of loyalty. One shard of flying metal grazed his flank, leaving a thin red line against his fur. He stumbled, growled, then pulled harder, determination written in every trembling muscle. Soldiers fired back, providing cover as dog and man crawled toward safety behind a crumbled wall. Liam coughed hard, lungs burning, vision clearing enough to see Valor straining, amber eyes blazing. He reached up, weak but steady, and pressed his uninjured hand into the dog's fur. "Good boy. Keep going." Together they reached cover where Corporal Denise Harper, her auburn braid streaked with dust, dropped beside them, rifle raised. "Carter's hit," she shouted, dragging a tourniquet from her pack. She glanced at Valor, blood streaking his side, and shook her head with something like awe. "Your mutt's braver than half the men I've met." Medical staff rushed in, bandaging Liam's shoulder and cleaning the shallow cut along Valor's flank. The firefight raged on, but the story had already spread among the men crouched behind walls and vehicles. Carter's shepherd had dragged him clear under fire, teeth locked in gear, a bullet grazing but not breaking him. By dusk, when the ambush had been driven back and the unit regrouped, the whispers had taken shape. Valor wasn't just a dog. He was the dog that wouldn't quit, the one who stood against fire and fear alike. That night, in the dim glow of lanterns, Liam lay with his arm in a sling. Valor curled beside him, his side bandaged, chest rising in steady breaths. Soldiers passed by, some clapping Liam's shoulder, others pausing to scratch Valor's ears with murmured praise. Lieutenant Hale stepped in last, helmet tucked under his arm, gray eyes softer than usual. He crouched, hand brushing Valor's head. "He's got more courage than most men I've led. You take care of him, Carter. You two are a team worth keeping alive." Liam looked down at Valor, who opened his eyes just long enough to meet his gaze. The dog's tail tapped once, faint but certain, and in that silent exchange, the legend began. The story of the dog who feared nothing, the one the unit had already begun to call the Fearless Shepherd. The weeks after the ambush hardened the unit in ways no drill could. Faces once easy with jokes now carried the thin lines of sleepless nights, and every soldier learned to glance at windows and alleys as though the air itself could strike. Yet, amid that tension, one constant became a source of quiet steadiness: the black and tan shepherd who paced beside Liam Carter. Valor, scar faintly healed along his flank, had turned from promising recruit to trusted comrade, his reputation growing louder each time bullets cracked the air. It began with the minefields. The convoy had halted on a dirt road fringed with brittle grass, suspicion rising after a scout spotted disturbed earth near a culvert. Lieutenant Marcus Hale ordered a sweep, jaw tight. Men knelt, probing with metal detectors, progress slow and dangerous. Then Valor's head snapped, ears forward, nose low. He pulled against his lead, circling a patch of soil until he sat sharply, muscles tense. Liam called out, and within minutes engineers uncovered a set of crude pressure mines. The shepherd had sensed what the machines had nearly missed. Hale gave a single nod, but the look in his gray eyes spoke volumes. Word spread through the ranks. When the shepherd sat, you listened. Days later, under the dim light of dawn, the unit entered a shelled village where walls leaned like broken teeth. It was Sergeant Paul Riley who led the entry. Riley was 36, thick-shouldered, with a bristled beard peppered black and white. His nose had been broken twice, leaving it crooked, but his grin, when it came, was quick and disarming. Once a firefighter before enlistment, he carried himself with the calm of a man who had seen chaos before and learned not to flinch. Inside one collapsed structure, Valor stiffened, nose darting. Ignoring dust choking the air, he barked and clawed at a pile of rubble. Liam and Riley rushed to dig, hands bloody from stone and splinters until faint cries answered them. Two soldiers, pinned beneath fallen beams, were pulled free. Riley sat back, wiping grime from his face, and muttered with admiration, "That dog's worth 10 of us." But it was not only soldiers Valor found. On a gray afternoon after another clash, the unit combed through shattered homes for survivors. Smoke curled from broken rafters, and the cries of distant families echoed. Valor suddenly bounded toward a collapsed stairwell, pawing and whining. Liam followed, dropping to his knees. Beneath boards, faint whimpers rose. Together with Corporal Denise Harper, they pried open the wreckage to reveal two children. Thin, dirt-streaked, wide-eyed with terror. A boy no older than 8 clung to his little sister, barely 5, her dark hair plastered with ash. Harper scooped the girl into her arms, murmuring softly, her freckled face gentled by relief. Liam watched as Valor pressed his nose gently against the boy's trembling hand. The dog's amber eyes soft, steady, telling the child without words, "You're safe now." The rescue spread through camp like wildfire. Soldiers who had once viewed Valor as just another tool now began slipping him scraps of food, scratching his ears with the kind of reverence reserved for saints. Around the campfires at night, when stories were traded to push back the dark, Valor's name came up again and again. "He's not a dog," one soldier said, shaking his head. "He's a soldier without a uniform." And though Valor never basked in the attention, lying curled at Liam's boots, eyes half closed, Every man and woman there felt safer knowing the shepherd was among them. Liam often caught himself staring at the dog in quiet moments, watching the way his chest rose and fell, the way his ears twitched at distant sounds. He thought of the scar across his own shoulder, the way he might not be breathing if not for the jaws that had dragged him to safety. Late at night, when the world finally hushed, he whispered the truth he had carried since that first rescue. "You're not just my hope anymore. You're all of ours." Valor's tail would sweep the dirt once, as if to answer before settling again. It was in these small, silent exchanges that the shepherd became more than legend. He became brother, guardian, and symbol. Not through noise or boasting, but through action. And in every corner of the unit, his title spread in whispers, the silent hero. The sun had not yet cleared the jagged horizon when the unit moved out. The air was thick with dust, a dry heat settling early, and every shadow looked like it carried teeth. Trucks rolled slow through narrow passes, engines grinding, the world beyond the windshield filled with ruins that once held markets, schools, and laughter. Now it was nothing but empty windows and walls pocked by fire. Liam Carter rode near the front, Valor pressed against his boots, the shepherd's ears high, his nose twitching at every faint scent carried on the wind. Liam's shoulder had healed enough to move freely again, though the scar ached in the cold of night. His hand found Valor's thick fur as the convoy slowed. The mission was a forward sweep into contested ground. Intelligence had warned of resistance, but no one knew how strong. Lieutenant Marcus Hale briefed them with his usual clipped words, voice steady as stone. Beside him, Specialist Daniel "Danny" Brooks checked equipment with restless energy. Brooks was 22, lean, wiry, with sandy blonde hair that always looked like he had run a hand through it and forgotten to smooth it back. His green eyes held a kind of reckless brightness, the look of someone too young to have seen enough fear yet. A farm boy from Iowa, Brooks often cracked jokes to hide nerves, earning groans and laughter alike. But underneath the humor was a streak of loyalty fierce enough to make him run into fire if it meant pulling someone out. By mid-morning, the clash came. Gunfire erupted from high ridges, sharp and merciless, pinning the convoy in the valley below. Soldiers scrambled for cover as rounds tore into rock and steel. Hale barked orders, voice unshaken, while Riley, the grizzled sergeant, hauled men behind wrecked walls. Liam threw himself down, rifle up. Valor crouched low beside him, eyes burning with focus. Explosions tore the ground, dirt raining over helmets. Brooks shouted over the chaos. "Left flank, they're pushing," before darting to cover. Liam rose to follow. Then the world slowed. A machine gun barked from above, its line of fire sweeping the road. Liam, caught in the open, saw the barrel swing. Valor moved first. The shepherd leapt, body colliding with Liam's chest, shoving him hard into the dirt. Bullets cracked past, sparks leaping from stone. For one heartbeat, Liam thought he had escaped untouched. Then he felt wet heat splash against his sleeve. He rolled to see Valor standing over him, body stiff, teeth bared, chest heaving. A dark stain spread along the dog's side, blood welling from a torn flank where the rounds had grazed and ripped. "Valor!" Liam's cry tore from him, raw, desperate. He reached, hands trembling, but the shepherd did not collapse. Instead, Valor planted his paws firm, shoulders squared, his body a shield over his handler. Eyes of amber fire locked on the ridge above, unyielding even as his legs quivered under the weight of pain. Every bullet that struck stone seemed to hammer into Liam's heart, But still Valor stood, silent defiance in living flesh. Riley lunged forward through smoke, dragging both man and dog into cover. "He's hit bad," the sergeant shouted, his beard streaked with dust and sweat. Brooks dropped beside them, face pale now, his humor gone. "We've got to stop the bleeding. Now." His farm-calloused hands pressed bandages against Valor's wound, voice shaking. "Come on, boy." "Stay with us." Liam cradled the shepherd's head, his own voice breaking. "You saved me again. Damn it, you saved me." Valor's breathing was ragged, shallow, but his gaze never left Liam's face. Even as blood soaked the dirt, he held his ground, as though surrender was not an option written in his bones. The firefight raged around them, Hale directing counterfire, Harper and her Malinois pushing flanks. Time blurred into the pounding of hearts and the hammer of weapons. At last, the enemy fire faltered, retreating under relentless return volleys. Silence, brittle and sharp, fell over the valley. Medics rushed in, packs snapping open. They worked fast, sealing wounds, starting fluids, voices clipped and efficient. "He's strong," one medic muttered, sweat streaking his temple. "He's got a chance if we move now." Liam never let go of Valor's head, whispering again and again, "Hold on, buddy. Please hold on." When the medics lifted the stretcher, Valor's tail thumped once, faint but deliberate, as though to reassure the man he had saved. Liam's vision blurred, but he bent low, words torn from his throat. "You've already done more than anyone could ask. You're my hero, Valor. Always." The convoy moved again, slower, carrying the wounded. But in every heart of every soldier who had seen it, the image was seared. The shepherd, bleeding yet unbroken, standing over his handler like a guardian carved from fire and loyalty. That day, Valor was no longer just a dog or even just a comrade. He became the measure of courage itself. The war ended not with fireworks or a sudden silence, but with a slow winding down, like a great storm that had finally burned itself out. Orders came through in clipped transmissions. The conflict was over. Troops were to be rotated home. For weeks afterward, soldiers moved through routines of packing and debriefing, their bodies ready to leave, but their minds still half listening for echoes of gunfire. Liam Carter stood among them, shoulder healed but scarred, his eyes carrying the weight of too many nights without rest. At his side, Valor walked steady, the thick black and tan coat now marred by a scar running along his flank, healed but permanent, the kind of mark no one could mistake for anything but proof of survival. Their convoy rumbled away from the dust and smoke and toward airfields lined with aircraft waiting to carry men back across oceans. Valor boarded without hesitation, paws steady on the ramp. Other soldiers glanced his way, some reaching to pat his head or scratch his ears as though touching a lucky charm. Lieutenant Marcus Hale clasped Liam's shoulder before departure, his gray eyes softer than the soldier's usual granite. "Bring him home, Carter," Hale said, voice low. "He's earned more than a medal." The plane touched down on American soil beneath a wide, forgiving sky. When the soldiers stepped out, the air smelled different, cleaner, filled with cut grass and rain carried on the wind. Families gathered along the small-town airstrip, waving flags, clutching flowers, eyes shining with relief. Valor moved beside Liam like he always had, calm amid the noise, his amber gaze sweeping the crowd as though he was still protecting the unit. Waiting at the edge of the tarmac was Mayor Helen Whitaker, a woman in her mid-50s with tall posture, silver streaks cutting through her dark brown hair, and the kind of presence that blended authority with warmth. Her face, lined by years of responsibility, softened into a smile as she stepped forward. She wore a navy blue coat, simple pearl earrings, and carried herself with the grace of someone who had known both the strain of leadership and the pride of welcoming her people home. "Welcome back, heroes," she said, her voice steady enough to carry over the crowd. She bent slightly, meeting Valor's eyes, and whispered as though speaking to a person, "And welcome home, brave one." The procession to the town square was unplanned but inevitable. Families and neighbors lined the streets, clapping, cheering, waving banners that said, "Welcome home." Children darted forward, shy at first, until one bold boy with freckles and messy brown hair ran to Valor, throwing small arms around the shepherd's thick neck. Valor stood still, then lowered his head gently, allowing the embrace. The crowd roared with laughter and tears, phones snapping pictures that would be shared for years. At the square, the unit gathered before the old courthouse where a podium had been set. The building's red brick glowed in the late afternoon sun, windows reflecting banners strung across lampposts. The air carried the scent of fresh bread from the bakery down the street, mingling with the metallic tang of flagpoles and the sweetness of flowers laid at the steps. Mayor Whitaker spoke first, her words ringing with gratitude. She thanked the soldiers for their courage, for carrying the weight of war so the town could sleep in peace. But when she turned toward Valor, her voice softened, almost breaking. "We honor all our heroes today," she said, "even the one without a uniform. This town will not forget the shepherd who gave more than words ever could." The crowd erupted, clapping and stomping, some chanting Valor's name. Liam knelt beside his dog, pressing a hand against the thick fur over the healed scar. For a moment the noise faded, and all he could hear was his own voice whispering what he had whispered since the first night. "You're my hope." Old men, veterans of wars long past, stepped forward to salute the shepherd. Women with lines of worry across their faces bowed their heads in respect. Children clustered close, hands reaching to touch him as though courage could be borrowed through fur and warmth. Valor accepted it all with calm dignity, standing tall, tail sweeping slowly, amber eyes reflecting trust and steady strength. By evening, when the crowd finally dispersed, the square still hummed with memory. Liam sat on the courthouse steps, Valor stretched beside him, the sky painted in orange and purple. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to breathe without listening for danger. Beside him lay not just a dog, but a living emblem of loyalty. A soldier in every way but name, and a guardian whose scar would forever mark the price of devotion. That day, Valor was not only welcomed home, he was enshrined in the hearts of the people. A silent oath passed through every eye that met his. They would remember him as the fearless shepherd, the loyal comrade, the hero who had returned. Years passed with a quietness that felt strange after the chaos of war. The town settled back into its rhythms. Markets on Saturdays, children racing bikes through quiet streets, and old men playing chess outside the diner, where steam rose from cups of coffee into the crisp morning air. In Liam Carter's small home on the edge of town, peace had a heartbeat, and its name was Valor. The shepherd aged with grace but also with inevitability. His muzzle grew flecked with white, his once black saddle coat now softened by gray along the back. His movements slowed, but there was no dimming in his eyes. Amber still burned in them, steady as ever, reflecting not years of weariness, but the wisdom of survival. When he walked the streets beside Liam, tail swaying with measured dignity, people stopped to greet him. Children, now old enough to know the stories, whispered as they pointed. That's Valor. He had become more than a dog in their minds. He was a living chapter of history, moving on 4 legs. Liam had changed too. At 35, his face carried sharper lines, his scar faint but permanent, the mark of a soldier who had seen both destruction and deliverance. His hair had darkened into chestnut, and he wore it longer than he had in uniform, often tucked beneath a ball cap. He carried himself with quiet humility, but his eyes softened whenever they turned toward his old companion. Where once Liam leaned on Valor for hope, now he became the guardian of the one who had guarded him. The town never let Valor fade into the background. Every Memorial Day he was led to the front of the procession, where flags waved and the mayor gave speeches. Emma Clark, a high school history teacher in her early 40s, tall and willowy with shoulder-length blonde hair and wire-rimmed glasses, often organized her students to attend. She had a gentle way of speaking, soft enough to soothe but strong enough to hold attention, and she believed children learned best when stories were alive. She told her classes about the shepherd who had braved bullets, mines, and fire, then pointed to the scar on his flank as proof. Many of her students drew pictures of Valor, which she collected and framed in the school hallway as a gallery of gratitude. Neighbors treated Valor with reverence. Mrs. Jean Thompson, an elderly widow with silver curls and a stooped back, often brought biscuits from her kitchen, insisting they were baked just for him. She had lost her husband in a war decades earlier, and she claimed seeing Valor made her feel as though loyalty itself still walked the earth. Children took turns tossing soft tennis balls into Liam's yard, and even though Valor chased them more slowly now, the joy in his stride never faded. As the years turned, Liam began building a small wooden marker in the backyard. He cut the planks carefully, sanded them until smooth, and carved words into the surface by hand. On warm evenings, he worked while Valor lay nearby in the grass, watching, with patient eyes, the setting sun gilding his fur with gold. Liam often spoke as he worked, voice low but steady. "You're more than a story, buddy. You're the reason I believe in tomorrow." On one crisp autumn day, with leaves swirling across the yard and the sky wide and blue, Liam finished the work. He set the marker upright beneath the old oak tree where Valor liked to rest in the shade. The wood was etched with simple words: friend, hero, teacher of loyalty and hope. Liam ran his fingers over the carved letters, then rested his forehead against them. Valor pressed close, leaning his weight gently against Liam's leg, amber eyes steady, tail brushing once in approval. That evening, neighbors gathered in the yard, drawn by word of mouth. Emma Clark brought her students, who stood in a circle clutching drawings of the shepherd. Mrs. Thompson carried flowers, her hands trembling, but her smile soft. The mayor spoke briefly, but it was Liam's words that lingered. He stood with Valor beside the marker and said, "This dog has been my brother, my shield, and my light in the darkest nights. His courage taught me what it means to keep moving when everything tells you to stop. He has written history with his loyalty, and today we honor him not with medals or parades, but with gratitude that will never fade." Valor stood through it all with quiet dignity, ears tall, eyes calm. Children came forward one by one to pat his fur, whispering thanks. Veterans saluted, some wiping tears. The moment was not loud, but it was unforgettable. In the years that followed, even as Valor's steps grew slower and his naps longer, his presence remained a steady anchor for the town. People spoke of him not only as a war dog, but as a teacher, a living reminder that courage is not about the absence of fear, but the decision to stand anyway. And when visitors came to the little town, children would point to the old shepherd resting under the oak tree and say, with pride swelling in their voices, "That's Valor. He's our hero." Sometimes God's greatest miracles do not come as thunder or lightning, but as the quiet breath of a loyal companion who stands beside us when the night is darkest. Valor was not just a dog. He was a reminder that heaven sends us guardians in fur, in flesh, in moments of unexpected grace. Through his loyalty and courage, we see a reflection of God's love, steadfast, unyielding, and alive in the smallest acts of devotion. And in our everyday lives, whether it is caring for a child, comforting a neighbor, or showing kindness to a stranger, we too are given the chance to be someone's miracle. Just as Valor shielded his soldier without hesitation, we are called to shield one another with love, patience, and faith. If this story touched your heart, let it be more than just a tale. Share it with someone who needs hope today. Leave your thoughts in the comments, subscribe to join our community of faith and courage, and together let's carry forward these lessons of love and loyalty. May God bless you, protect your family, and guide you in every step of your journey.